Welcome everybody to another edition of an Ecom Crew free webinar. These are webinars open to our entire community, free of charge. We try to give as much of a value dump as we can in these. That's kind of the whole topic for these. So today we're going to be going over importing from China. So every month we pick a different topic. Obviously we get a lot of questions to our help box, and the things that are coming up the most are the ones that we try to make a part of these webinars. So the big things kind of topic right now is how to import from China, how to get products, high quality products from China, differentiate, and things like that. So that's what we're going to be going over today. And Dave, if you could do me a favor and flip us over to the first slide. Perfect. So let's start with just an overview of things that we're looking for in 2018. How can I differentiate a product, and either through marketing or changing the product itself? This is something that we've been working really hard on over here at Terran. I can tell you that, you know, it's funny looking at our life cycle of what we've done with products over the years. The very first things that we brought in, I literally found them like off of Alibaba and just ordered them in a poly bag and didn't even bother putting our logo on it. And you just throw them up on Amazon, and you know, you kind of follow the old way of doing reviews where you'd give away the product for free in exchange for an honest review. And it was just like magic, and it worked. But, you know, just like anything else in life, things change, and that definitely doesn't work anymore. And then, you know, it's somewhere along the line as things were changing, instead of just constantly trying to be, you know, one step ahead of the curve or one step behind the curve, and you're constantly chasing like where things are going, we sat down and took a really hard look at where things are actually going to be many years from now. And the idea behind that is differentiated products. So that's what we're really going to be talking about here today, here on the next slide. So what can you do with differentiated products? Like there's some things that are harder than others, some things that are easier. If you want to, you know, move the needle and you're just getting started, especially, I would target some of these easier things, right? You can find a product on Alibaba or at the Canton Fair or one of the other many ways that you can source things. And instead of having, we always use the garlic press as the funny thing here, but like instead of having the same silver garlic press that like everyone else has, there are things that you can do to differentiate that. For instance, you can make it in different colors. You can make a black version of it, so it's more of like a modern look, or, you know, more sleek looking garlic press. You can make it in different sizes. Maybe you make one that's like a travel garlic press for people that want to have a picnic and make fresh garlic at the beach or something. Or maybe it's a larger one that is easier for arthritic hands, where, again, you're not just taking the same product off the shelf and doing what everyone else is doing. You can bundle it with accessories, and this is something that we've had a lot of luck with. And for us, bundling things with things that happen from multiple manufacturers has been the thing that's helped us differentiate more. What you're really looking to do here is, if someone were to look up your import records or just go do a search on Alibaba, they can't easily copy you, right? So if you end up using more than one manufacturer to put together a project, like for instance, with our gel pens as just a one for instance, we're using 3 manufacturers to put that together. And that keeps a lot of the competitors that by itself. So like one manufacturer makes the case, one manufacturer is making the pens, one manufacturer is making our box. You know, that extra level of complexity makes it more difficult to copy, and helps you differentiate in ways that many other people out there aren't doing. You can sell it as a multi-pack item. So instead of just selling one of them, you can have a 5-pack or a 10-pack or whatever it might be. And typically, and it obviously depends on the niche. You're not going to sell a 5-pack of treadmills or something like that. But you can for more commoditized type items. And what ends up happening with multi-packs is your cost of goods or total cost per sale goes down exponentially when you go from selling just one unit of something to selling 2. Because if you're selling 2 of them in the same package, you're only paying 1 pick, pack, and ship fee, and the shipping fees are going to be way, way lower as a cost if you break it out over 2 items. So you can offer the item at a lower price per unit to the customer and make more money. So a lot of times, like multi-packs are like a really great way to just differentiate yourself. Now, this is unfortunately a little bit easily copied, because other people could be like, okay, well, throw 3 or 4 or 5 of these in a bag for me, but it's still one of the many ways that you can differentiate. That's certainly easy. You can make it out of a different material. This is like a really simple thing you could do. You go to the manufacturer of that garlic press, again, as a for instance, and you say, look, I want to use solid steel for all of these instead of this like cheap aluminum crap that you guys are sending out for the typical garlic press that falls apart, or maybe it's the spring inside of it, or whatever it might be. Having them use the same mold but use a higher quality material is a pretty easy way to differentiate. So again, it's unfortunately a little bit easily copied, but it's something you can do to differentiate. And then another thing that we love to do here is dramatically improve on packaging. It's something that we're really passionate about. Like here's, I just have something sitting here. I was like looking like just some of the things that we're doing with our new brand, just with the packaging on it. I mean, this is retail ready for all of our packaging, and all of our packaging for this brand has a consistent look, and there's a nice insert in there and things like that. So really kicking up the packaging quite a bit can differentiate you and make you look like a more legitimate and a retail brand. It's something that I'm like, again, very passionate about. I think it does make a pretty big difference. Yeah. So the one thing that I skipped was the top bullet. I kind of did this out of order on purpose because, I'm kind of going from easy to hard here. The harder things to do are changing the actual product. So, and again, depending on where you're at in your life cycle of importing from China is going to depend on how much of this you can and want to do. The reason this becomes harder is because the upfront fees typically are going to be more expensive. So if you're changing the actual product, like for our latest product, using it as an example, we just developed a new set of watercolor brush pens. So this was hard. I would put this in the hard category because we changed the product to make them refillable. This was something that doesn't really exist a lot yet. There's a couple people out there doing it, but like we really kind of reinvented this product, something that's already out there. So we didn't make a patent or invent watercoloring or anything like that, but we made something that's different enough that's going to be very difficult for other people to copy. And one of the things that we had to do was make a mold. We had to make our own mold so like you can have the cap that can screw off the back of it. And we also had like our name engraved in every one of them, and also the color number individually on all of them. And also the other thing that we did was we differentiated the product by adding a case. I was talking about that already, where you're bundling. So it's also got a travel case. And it's also a situation of where we're selling or kind of giving away the razor, but selling blades. We also can sell these refills for really high premiums. So that's something where we changed quite a bit, and we had to place a big initial order for these. That's another thing that you can do that's under the harder way, is placing an order for something that requires a very large MOQ to get started. And the reason for that was, in order for them to make the molds for us without charging us $30,000, we had to place a relatively big order, and they included that into the cost for us. And it really is a very successful product. We just launched it. We're going to be covering that next week in our Under the Hood segment for Ecom Crew Premium members. So those of you that are on the call here that are premium members, I'm going to be showing you guys that exact product and the launch sequence and our initial sales the first couple of weeks, which have been phenomenal. So that's definitely on the harder spectrum of it. But for us, what I look at is like the complexity moving forward is kind of our opportunity, right? We want to be over in a group of people on Amazon and online that are away from everybody else in the crowd, so we don't get lost in that mix. And that's kind of the way we've been approaching it. So that's my spiel on that. And Dave, I know you wanted to talk about some of the stuff here on the next slide, so I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it from there.
Yeah, and I think just kind of elaborating on what Mike has said there, you should be spending a disproportionate amount of your time developing your products, because really products are what you're selling at the end of the day. You can have all the best marketing in the world, but if your products suck, your sales are going to suck. So make sure that you're spending a lot of time upfront developing those products, trying to differentiate them as much as possible. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can do some pretty minor changes to your products, but the more that you can differentiate them, the better your Amazon sales or your Shopify sales or whatever channel you're selling on, the better those are going to be. So it's worth spending the time upfront.
Yep. And just real quick before you get into this, Dave, I just wanted to mention, if anybody has any questions, you can click on the Q&A tab, and we're going to be doing open Q&A at the end of the webinar. So we'll get to all the questions at the very end for you.
Okay. So where do you find suppliers? I'm just going to run down a few of the different ways that you can find suppliers. Most of us probably are aware of Alibaba, and Alibaba is fine, but there's a couple things that you need to be aware of with Alibaba. The most important thing is that the best suppliers are not on Alibaba. And that's kind of the big challenge with Alibaba. The best suppliers in China with the best products aren't advertised on Alibaba because Alibaba tends to attract smaller buyers. And if you're a big factory pushing that you can hardly keep the machines are running 24/7 and you have more demand than you have supply, you're not trying to get those smaller buyers. So that's the challenge that you're going to have with Alibaba. You can't find the very best suppliers on Alibaba. The other thing that you want to be aware of with Alibaba is that on Alibaba, vendors don't tend to maintain their Alibaba stores all that well. So they may have a product catalog of hundreds of items. They may only have 5 or 10 of their top selling items on their Alibaba page. So if you're looking for an item and you're going through Alibaba and you've searched for that item, whether it's a garlic press or an ATV bag or whatever it is that you're searching for, you're going to kind of need to use Alibaba more as a phone book. Find those suppliers and then reach out to them directly and say, hey, by the way, do you sell this product that I'm looking for? Don't just strictly rely on their Alibaba page because it may not be accurate and all-inclusive. Now, the favorite place that I like to look for suppliers, and I think this goes for Mike as well, is trade shows. And the reason why is that trade shows do attract the very best suppliers. So if you're a huge supplier in China, again, you have more demand than you have supply, you still want to attract those mega clients like the Home Depots and the Walmarts and all the really big potential customers for you. So you're going to go to the top trade shows, especially the top trade shows in your niche. And you can kind of piggyback on that demand that those suppliers are trying to get from Walmarts and Home Depots, and you can meet those suppliers there. So trade shows are arguably the very best way to find suppliers in China. Now, the big downside with trade shows, of course, is that you actually have to go to China. Now, I'll give you a couple hacks if you don't want to go to China. If you don't want to go to China, go to a website called ChinaExhibition.com. Now, most of you probably know about shows like the Canton Fair. Canton Fair is the world's largest trade show. It takes place in China twice a year. Canton Fair is great, but there are hundreds of other trade shows in China, very niche specific. So one that I go to every year is an auto show in Shanghai, and I can find way more suppliers for my niche in this auto show than I could ever find at the Canton Fair. Canton Fair is a pretty broad show that only attracts a few different suppliers per niche. A niche-specific trade show is going to have a much broader selection of both suppliers and subsequently products. So go to a trade show like ChinaExhibition.com, find some of the relevant trade shows there for you, and here's a little hack. After the trade show takes place, if you're not going to China, simply go through the exhibitor list on each of those trade show websites, go through the exhibitor list, visit their websites, and reach out to those suppliers after the trade show has happened and say, hey, I found you through the Shanghai Auto Show. Can you send me your product catalog? And then what will happen is those suppliers will think that you've been to the trade show. You're going to have more trust and credibility at that point, and they're going to be more open to sharing with you their product catalog, their product pricing. They'll give you better pricing just for the fact that they think that you made the commitment already to actually go to China.
Hey, Dave, we had a quick comment here that your volume was fading in and out, and I heard it too. If you can try to...
Yeah, let me try it. Let me know, guys, if it keeps fading in and out. It's this USB cord that is on its way out. So I'll give it another try here. If it's still bad, give me a shout, Mike, because I can't see the chat.
It sounded better when you like scooted closer to the monitor. So I'm not sure if that was closer to the mic or what that was, but that did sound better for a second there.
Okay, I'll speak into the mic, guys.
That does sound better.
All right. A few other ways that you can find suppliers. I'll go through them really quickly here. Import records. If you're not aware, when you're importing into America and a few other countries, all those import records are public information. According to the Freedom of Information Act in the US, all the records when you make an import into the US is publicly accessible. Now that really sucks if you're an actual importer, because that means that people like me and Mike and all of you can go and find information about the products that that company is importing, what the name of the supplier is that they're importing. But it's great if you're trying to find suppliers. So if you find a product that you really like, what you can do, just find the company name and go to a website like Import Genius or Panjiva. Those are paid services. Or you can go to portexaminer.com. It's free, but the information is more limited, but it still works. Type in the name of the company into one of those websites, and what it will do is bring you a list of all the import records for that company. So you'll be able to find out, like I mentioned, things like what products they're importing, how many of them, and also the name of the suppliers that they're importing from, whether it's China or anywhere else in the world. The other thing, a couple other places, Yiwu, you might have heard of Yiwu. Yiwu is the world's largest wholesale market. It's basically a 24/7 version of the Canton Fair. Yiwu tends to be a little bit lower quality items, but the advantage is that with Yiwu, they're very, you can order very small minimum order quantities. So 50 to 100 units per item, completely fine. I don't recommend that you go over to China strictly for Yiwu, but if you're in China already, I definitely recommend, if you can spare a day or two in your schedule, go up to Yiwu for a day, check out the import market there, and you might actually find a few different items which could actually be relatively successful for you.
And geographically speaking, Yiwu is close to Shanghai.
Yeah. And final thing, a lot of people overlook this. If you're already importing from China, look to your current suppliers to find products. Again, like I mentioned, all supplier or not all suppliers are totally open with their product catalog. They may not have all their products available online. They may not have them all on their website. Ask your supplier if they have any other products which you might be interested in. If you're trying to find a hard to find product, you haven't had any luck going through Alibaba or trade shows or anywhere else, just ask your supplier, say, hey, do you think you can help me source this item? A lot of the suppliers in China are happy to help you source items, and they'll take a little markup, maybe 10%, but that 10% savings that you get from those 10% markup that you pay might be less than the discount that those suppliers are going to get you, because they probably have a little bit better skill in negotiating with Chinese suppliers. Okay, so kind of on the topic of finding suppliers, in China, there are two types of companies predominantly: trading companies and factories. Now, a factory is just what you think it is. It's a factory. They make a bunch of different products, whether it's your pair of jeans or a computer or whatever it is, they just simply make the product. Now, a trading company, they don't actually physically make anything. What they do is they basically contact a bunch of different factories, and they put those different items in their product catalog, and they'll basically be a middleman between you and the factory. Now, a lot of people, when they're first starting off importing, say, well, I'm not going to work with a trading company ever. Why would I want to do that? I want to be completely close to the source, and I will only deal with factories. Now, a couple things that you want to keep in mind with factories. So in China, no factory makes absolutely everything. So if you all of a sudden have this vision that you're only going to work with factories, well, that factory is almost certainly not making every component of that product anyways. So imagine a pair of blue jeans. That factory that you find making blue jeans, they're not making the buttons, they're not making the string that goes with it, they're not making the fabric. All they're doing is sewing it. Same thing goes with something like the iPhone. The iPhone is made by a company in China called Foxconn. They are not manufacturing every part of that iPhone. They're not making the cameras, they're not making the screens and all this and that. They're simply assembling it. So factory in China is a really ambiguous word. So I highly recommend that you do not get it fixated into your mind. You should only work with factories, because like I say, that definition of a factory could be much different than what you have in your mind. The other thing is that trading companies, yes, they're a middleman in between you and the factory, but trading companies have also a few advantages. First, the quality of trading companies tends to be a little bit higher because hopefully they're doing some quality inspections on your behalf, and they're filtering out the bad products and keeping the good products. Second off, like I mentioned before, Chinese companies tend to have a little bit better leverage and skill when negotiating with other Chinese factories. So they may get an item for cheaper than you, that even when they add their markup, it's going to work out apples to apples cheaper than you could actually negotiate directly with the factory. So keep it in mind, neither trading companies or factories are absolutely better or worse, but I highly recommend don't strictly say in your mind that I'm only going to work with factories, because trading companies can be great as well. Okay, so Once you've found some great products, you found a great supplier, next step is obviously making an order with that supplier. Now, if any of you have tried importing already, you've probably went to go get a quote for this great product that you have, and the supplier gives you a totally absurd MOQ, minimum order quantity. So if you're like me, when I have a product, I've thought of this great product, I've done a lot of product research on it, I think that it's going to be a hit, but I'm still not completely sure. I mean, I've been doing this long enough now where I know I can think that I found the best product in the world, but until I actually try selling it on Amazon or my website or wherever, I can't say 100% if it's going to be a hit or not. So I want to try to commit as little as possible in that first order. I don't want to order 5,000 units of the next widget, only find out that it's a flop. So how do you get that MOQ number really low, at least on your first order? So there's a couple things that you need to understand. The most important is, why does your supplier have the MOQ in the first place? So if you're developing a product from scratch, it's all of a sudden the Dave Bryant mouse pad spectacular, and I've completely constructed this new and novel product. Well, the factory doesn't keep that in stock, obviously. They're producing it just for me. And that's going to take a lot of work for them to create those molds, to create the design for it, this, that, and the other thing. So they are going to have a high MOQ. There's no way to negotiate that. If the product's completely new and novel, you're just going to have to suck up that the MOQ is going to be high. However, if you're importing more or less what they call an off-the-shelf product, something like, for example, I've developed an ATV bag. I made a few different modifications to it, made it a little bit bigger, changed the straps, changed the fabric. More or less, it's an off-the-shelf private label product. Well, the big reason why they have a high MOQ when I try to order a product like this is simply that it's too much work and money to deal with a small order. So the factory or the trading company has certain fixed costs. Every time they get an order, they're going to have wire transfer fees to accept that wire. There's going to be shipping costs on their end to ship it from their factory to the port. They're going to have packaging questions, all these different things. So there's a certain cost for them of dealing with small orders. But more importantly than all the monetary costs, it's just a lot of work to deal with small guys on these small orders. And again, these companies don't have infinite resources. Labor in China, especially hiring a customer service rep that speaks English, is not cheap. So they can't be spending a bunch of time with everybody. So if this is the case, if you're importing more or less a private label product, you want a low MOQ, just be low maintenance. That's what I recommend to people. So don't ask a million different questions. Don't try to nickel and dime them for every last dollar. Just be low maintenance. And more often than not, if you're basically offering to pay, you find a product, they quote you a 500 piece MOQ and you say, hey, can I do 100 pieces? I'm ready to pay right now. Just send me your banking information. More often than not, they'll accept that, as long as you're, like I say, not being a pain in the butt for them. And the last thing is, if you've ever tried talking to a supplier, it seems like the default answer for an MOQ is 500 pieces. Now, a big reason why it's often 500 pieces is that when a factory is importing something or is developing something like, say, a cell phone, when they're buying the boxes for the cell phone, they do not make the boxes. They're having to order these from a box factory, and the MOQ on boxes is almost always 500 pieces, and they just assume that you want full color customized boxes with your logo and your name on the box and all these great fancy things. So the MOQ actually has nothing to do with the product. It just has something to do with the box. So what you can do in these cases is simply tell the supplier, no, I don't need any customized boxes. Just send me a plain generic white box. Put our barcode on them, of course, on our shipping labels, but we don't need any custom artwork. And again, more often than not, they'll say, okay, great, then we can accept your order of 100 pieces. You don't need to order 500 pieces. And the final silver bullet, if you're trying to negotiate your MOQs down on your first order, is a trial order. So a lot of people, when they're first ordering from China, they find this great product, and what they do is they order one sample of that product because they want to see what that product actually looks like in person. And that's great. I mean, you should always get a sample of the product before you commit a lot of money to it. But if you order just one item of a product, you can't test sell that product on Amazon or your website. Even if you throw that one item on Amazon and it sells out on the first day, well, that's not really indicative necessarily of what the sales are going to be for the next 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. what you want is to order a slightly larger amount as a trial order. I call it not a sample, but a trial order. And that way you can get a little bit better appreciation for how many units you could feasibly sell. So again, if I'm looking at importing something like this pair of scissors, what I'll do instead of asking for one sample of this pair of scissors to be shipped to me is I'll ask for one box. And maybe 50 units or 100 units get shipped in one box. But what I can then do, I take these 50 or 100 units of scissors, I put them up on Amazon. If I sell 100 units in a week, I probably know that I have a pretty good product. I can probably expect to sell 10 to 20 units a day. And therefore, I'm going to have a lot more confidence making that next real, quote unquote, real order with the supplier. So highly recommend order a trial order instead of a sample order. Suppliers, more often than not, if it's your first time ordering with them, they are very lenient and very flexible in working with you on that very, very first order. But don't waste it on ordering one item. Try to get an entire carton of those products. Okay, so now you figured out the MOQ and everything. What about pricing? Everybody obviously wants the lowest price with on their products. So just a few different things to keep in mind with pricing in China. First off, back when I first started importing in 2008, prices were a lot more flexible. There was a lot more room for negotiation in China. Now, as Alibaba has really become ubiquitous with importing from China and there's a lot more importers, pricing is now more or less in China fairly fixed. Now, sure, you can negotiate a lot of times, maybe 5, maybe 10%, but there's not as much room for negotiation as there was before. You think that you get quoted $100, you can negotiate them down to $50, good chance that you can't. The only thing you want to do, try to get 2 or 3 quotes from 2 or 3 different suppliers. Make sure that they're all kind of in the same ballpark. There's an odd chance that maybe the supplier is trying to gouge you, but for the most part, prices are pretty fixed in China. Now, with that being said, though, there's some other negotiation strategies that you can take to get a lower overall cost. So like I mentioned before here, on your first order, negotiate the MOQ. That should be the very first thing that you try to negotiate with your supplier. If you're trying to make a $500 order and you're trying to negotiate a small MOQ and then also try to get them down 50% on the price at the same time, they're probably just going to stop responding to your emails and strictly ignore you. So don't try to really negotiate price, especially on your first order, especially if you're doing a really small order. Second order, the second time you make an order, now your order is probably getting a little bit bigger. Try to get back your sample fees and your sample shipping. So when you made that trial order or that sample order, your supplier probably promised you, yeah, okay, you pay for the shipping right now, you pay for these products right now, but on your next real order, then we'll refund you those shipping and sample fees. And that's basically their way of getting you to order again from them. So when you make that second order, make sure that you ask for those sample fees back and that sample shipping back. If you don't ask for it, they will not give it to you. On your third order, again, your orders hopefully at this point are starting to get a little bit bigger. At this point, you can start negotiating different freight terms. So there are certain things called Incoterms when you're importing from China, FOB, EXW. I won't get into the details of what these are, but FOB tends to be cheaper than EXW. If your supplier is quoting you in this shipping term EXW, ask for everything to be FOB at this point. If they've asked you to pay something like 50% down and 50% when the order is complete, or even if they've asked you to pay 100% upfront, you might have to do that on your first or second order. By your third order, at the very minimum, you should have what they call 30-70 payment terms. You pay 30% down and you pay 70% when the order is complete. But you should be keeping in your mind that you should try to negotiate those payment terms as your order size progresses and hopefully gets bigger. By the fourth order, again, now your orders are probably fairly significant. At this point, you can actually ask your supplier to pay for the cost of packaging. So they might, in the previous orders, because you're pretty small, they may have charged you for the boxes. At this point, ask them to pay for the boxes for you. By the fifth order, start negotiating for freight discounts. So a lot of people don't realize this, but just like how in North America, we love free shipping. Everything's free shipping. In China, they'll do that for you too. If you order big enough, they will a lot of times give you free shipping to America. If they won't give you free shipping, a lot of times they'll give you some type of credit. So maybe they'll give you $1,000 discount on shipping. So for example, if it's $2,000 to ship container to America, you can say to your supplier, hey, why don't we split this? I'll pay 1,000, you pay 1,000. Finally, the last thing you do, by the time that you're making something around your 6th order, again, your orders now are probably pretty big because your product has been proven, it has some traction. At this point, you also hopefully have some trust and some and a little bit of friendship going on with your supplier, and you can start actually asking for credit. Again, a lot of people don't realize this. Chinese, for whatever reason, Chinese factories are very open to credit. A lot of other Asian countries, Korea, and not open to credit at all. Chinese companies, if they trust you and they like you, they're open to credit terms. So I've been able to negotiate with a lot of my suppliers that I'll pay them 50% when the order is complete and 50% 30 days after I receive those items. So 30 days after I'm selling them and getting money actually coming into my bank account is when I pay for the remaining 50% of the order. So just keep that in mind.
I feel like there's like a line of the drunker they let you, you can let them get you, like the better your credit terms get. It's like kind of a parallel.
Well, I mean, it all comes down to trust. I mean,
yeah.
If you can go to China and get drunk with your suppliers and make a fool of yourself during karaoke, that is your ultimate seal of approval for getting credit. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to actually get your products from China into America, and we're going to specifically, Mike's going to talk here about how to get them into Amazon.
Yeah. So if you're going to a 3PL, I mean, the pros here of going, and a 3PL is a third-party logistics. So this can be another company, or even, I guess you could look at this as your own warehouse, and then obviously direct to Amazon is going to be sending it directly into their warehouse. So let's talk about the positives and negatives of each of these things. So if you're shipping it to a 3PL, the storage costs are going to be by far and away a lot less at a 3PL than at Amazon. We're paying actually $10 per pallet, $10.50 per pallet at our 3PL for storage. Amazon, 9 months of the year is about $60 a pallet. And the other 3 months of the year, it's about quadruple that. So storage fees, a significant number, you can get that lower by having it at a 3PL. At a 3PL, you can use a partner carrier. So if you have stuff here, now this is obviously an extra fee. If you were able to get it directly into Amazon, you wouldn't have to pay this. But if it's at a 3PL or already someplace in the United States, the shipping typically from that spot to Amazon is cheaper than anything I've ever seen. And that's with their partnered carrier. So you can use that feature within your account to set up shipments, and you can get very low cost shipping inbound into Amazon. And then multiple fulfillment centers isn't a problem. What did you mean by that?
I mean, if you're trying to ship directly to Amazon, then you have an issue where your shipment, when you create the shipment, if Amazon assigns it to multiple destinations, that's a problem. If you're trying to go directly into Amazon, you go to a 3PL, obviously it's not a problem because they can split up the shipment for you.
Oh, okay. That's what you're saying. Right. Yeah. So yeah, okay. If you're setting up like a large shipment from China directly, and yeah, I mean, a lot of times it'll break it up into multiple shipments. And this is, like, as Dave was saying, something very easy for a 3PL to handle. Now we get around this in a lot of multiple ways. I mean, number one, if you're shipping from Southern California and it's not oversized items and doesn't require labeling, a lot of times it's really easy to get that in the one center, the Ontario 8 center. But the other thing that you can do is jack up the size of your shipment to be like 3x the size of your first shipment. And this is if you're shipping directly into Amazon, and that way a full container can be going into each of those 3 centers, and you just make those your next 3 shipments. So that is one way to kind of get around that. If you're sending things in directly into Amazon, which we do quite a bit of, and we try to do this more and more, and we're weighing, again, the pros and cons of this and just the cost of storage. So if you're sending stuff in directly into Amazon, most likely you're sending in more than you need for like the next 30 or 60 days. You're probably sending in 90 days or even 6 months worth of stuff. And there's a storage cost to that, but then you're removing one of the pieces of the process of having to have it go to a 3PL first and have them pay to unload the container and other things like that. So Amazon actually does not charge any receiving costs, where a 3PL would charge to offload that container $250 to $500, depending on the size of the container and the complexity, sometimes more. Amazon actually does that for free. So that's another cost savings of sending it directly to Amazon. And if you can get a full container directly into Amazon, the overland freight costs are going to be relatively cheap. A lot of times it ends up on rail or things like that because it's a full container. And a full container shipping directly in Amazon is going to be a lot cheaper than breaking it up at a 3PL. Now, if it's at a 3PL, it's more work to set up shipments. You get one of the things I would say that's probably another pro here is that it ends up at the 3PL at first. You can look at it and touch it and feel it first, but the con is that it does take more work to get that shipment sent into Amazon. Someone else is getting their hands on it, and they got to label the boxes for you and label the pallets and shrink wrap it and get it off to Amazon. There's going to be a fee for that. It costs more, and it's more work, which obviously is more inbound cost to get it into the 3PL. It's definitely more money because, again, as I mentioned earlier, there's like another step in the way. There's more handling of your products, more time that things can go wrong. The more times you touch and feel a product and move it around, there's a chance for it to break or get scratched or damaged or just lost completely or stolen, which hopefully doesn't happen too often to you. So the cons of shipping into Amazon, it requires being able to ship everything into one storage center, like we were saying. So like a lot of times you'll set up a shipment and it won't let you ship it all into one center. So you have to do something like inventory placement, which would cost extra money to send it directly into Amazon. But again, one thing that we've done to get around this, we'll set up 3 shipments in advance. So like we have one product that, for instance, that we ship in a container a month in the Amazon. So 3 months in advance, we set up a shipment that's 3 times the size of our standard size shipments. The first one, let's say, goes to California, and then the next month we're sending it to Texas, and the next month we send it into Florida, and then that shipment is complete. There isn't a timeline in Amazon's mind and the time it takes you to ship in those things. You just have to get it into those centers over time. What you don't want to do is send in the California shipment and then delete the other 2. That will get you in trouble. Yeah. So stay away from that.
If you're going to do that, do not delete them. Just ignore them.
Yep. But overall, I mean, for us, just to kind of hit home to this, we have these articles here that Dave mentioned on the slides, but overall, for the bulk of what we're doing now, we do send it to a 3PL first. As we've gotten bigger and started analyzing this, unless we can sell through the container in 2 to 3 months, in almost every circumstance for us, it makes sense to send it to a 3PL first rather than sending the container or the shipment directly into Amazon.
Yeah, and I think for us personally, the break off or when going directly into Amazon, my time frame is 6 months because after 6 months, if you can't sell through it, then you're getting charged, what do they call it?
Long-term storage fees.
Long-term storage fees. So if we can sell out of it within 6 months and you can have it going to one fulfillment center, then yes, then we'll send it directly into Amazon. The other thing too is if you're doing a small shipment and you can ship it via air, again, to one fulfillment center, then yeah, it doesn't make sense if you can ship via air. Just ship it directly into Amazon because it makes no difference in cost shipping something from air from, say, Shanghai to Los Angeles opposed to Shanghai to Chicago. For the most part, it's the same price.
Yeah. So for us, like, I mean, Dave was saying like it's a 6-month kind of time limit. I'm a little bit more conservative on that because I definitely don't want to get hit with those long-term storage fees. And that's one thing you just don't ever have to worry about at a 3PL. At least the 3PLs that we've been using. I know there are some out there that do charge long-term storage fees. They don't want stuff. They don't want to be treated as like just a long-term warehouse. That's not their business. They make their money off of other things. Excuse me. But yeah, so that's direct to Amazon versus not direct to Amazon, pros and cons.
Sorry, I forgot. I'm in control here.
Yep. Please, master.
Yes.
All right. So some shipping hacks that.
Yeah, you can go through it, Mike.
Okay. So some shipping hacks that we've been using that have been really, really helpful for us is combining shipments from multiple suppliers into one container. So we typically have shipments that are coming from 2 main areas of China. We call the first one Southeast China, which is going to cover Shenzhen and Guangzhou and Qingdao?
Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Dongguan.
Dongguan. There's one other city that we ship from that's down in the southeast. I can't think of right now. But anyway, what we do a lot of the times with those is the company that's shipping the largest part of the shipment by cubic volume becomes like the point contact there. And then what we'll do is have the other shipments go to that manufacturer, and then they'll store them for us for free and load it for free into a container. I've never had a manufacturer push back and tell us they won't do this. So we get everything in the one container, and it does take a little bit extra time to do it this way because, a shipment might have to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks at this other manufacturer to get everything staged properly. But the more you order, the more you do this, the easier it becomes. The other area of China that we order from is what I would call like East Central China, which is Shanghai, Ningbo, and Wuhan. And the Wuhan shipments, we actually forward down the river into Ningbo or Shanghai and then combine them there. This saves a ton of money. And being able to ship full container loads is one of the biggest efficiencies in this business. And having a full container also, if you can get away from the less than container stuff where you're shipping with other people, also reduces your risk of getting stuck at customs, because we've had issues before. And I know a lot of people have had this problem where something in the container gets flagged and it stops the entire container, including your stuff, even though you've done nothing wrong. If you're able to ship things that are under this $800 limit, again, if you're shipping lightweight stuff that can be done by air, that doesn't have a high cost value, if it's under $800, then it gets into the U.S. for free. And this is like a little known fact. The United States, I guess, is big enough, and there's enough stuff coming in here that they just can't be bothered with things that are under $800. So there is no duty fee. So if you can ship in $750 packages, it's free. And this is one of the reasons that e-packet is so frustrating to a lot of people, because you're shipping in basically a container's worth of stuff over time, but never paying duty on it. And we're actually going to start looking at doing this ourselves, because if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah, it's crazy. Most of the countries in the world have a $20 to $30 limit. And for some reason in America, they have a $800 limit, which really opens the door for Chinese suppliers to compete here. But it opens the door too for you potentially, if you can kind of coordinate your shipments to be under that value.
Yep. Get your supplier to do all the labeling. This one's been a big thing for us. I mean, I actually still have this box here I was showing you before, but you can see, like, actually into our package design now, we're integrating that Amazon barcode right into it. That saves us 20 cents if Amazon were to do it per box to do it, which is very significant. But like our 3PL still charge like a dime to do it, and so getting the manufacturer to do that for you, they've never pushed back doing it for free, whether it's integrated into the box like we're doing now, or they're putting a label on there for us. They've never charged us anything for doing that. So it's a good shipping hack and a cost savings hack as well. Be pushing to, I think that's one word, somehow get to a 20-foot container, full container load. So first of all, the max efficiency is a 40-foot container. So if you can really get to a 40-foot container, we have a buddy, we call him 40-foot HQ. That's his nickname. Everyone gets nicknames, but he only ships in 40-foot containers. We try to do the same, but we do a lot of 20-foot containers as well. But the shipping efficiencies from bringing things in, basically you have air freight is your least efficient. Then you have less than a container load, then you have a full container load, then you have a 40-foot container load. Most of the what you pay to get stuff here is paperwork fees, and those paperwork fees are the same no matter how much you bring in. So as a proportion to your overall order, those paperwork fees and import fees and port security fee and all these other things are not variable costs, they're fixed costs. So if you can get to a full 20-foot container, like, your cost goes way down. And actually, we found that you only need to be a little bit past half full on a 20-foot container before it's more economical to just ship like a half full container that's just yours.
The other thing is too, with containers, you tend to save a lot of time too, compared to LCL, where LCL, they're taking your container with a bunch of other people's stuff, taking it to a warehouse, unloading it, separating it, this, that, and all the other stuff. And it takes an extra, normally 1 to 2 weeks. And again, time has a cost.
Yep. Alrighty, next slide. I think that was, that was it. So before we get to Q&A here, we got several questions. We're going to get to those right after this, but we'd be bad salespeople if we didn't just mention real quickly. It is Prime Week, and we have a special for Prime Week right now on Ecom Crew Premium. So we go to ecomcrew.com/premium and use the code Prime Day. It will be 50% off your first month. So it'll just be $79 for your first month. And as a part of Ecom Crew Premium, we have 3 training courses in there, importing from China, how to build a 7-figure brand, how to launch a new #1 bestseller on Amazon. Coming next month will be our Facebook Messenger course on e-commerce. And in addition to that, you get email access to us whenever you have a question. We also have a monthly Q&A webinar that's just for premium members. We spend about 90 minutes answering any question that you have. We'll answer them on an open Q&A. And then finally, we do a behind-the-scenes look at all of our brands and things that we're launching. And to me, that alone is worth the price of admission. So hopefully, we'll see you on the inside of Ecom Crew Premium. And we have a comment here from one of our premium members. I don't know if that goes out to everybody, but she says such a good investment. So thank you for mentioning that. And we have a bunch of premium members actually in the, I'm starting to recognize people's names now, because as we do this month after month, just a quick shout out to a couple people here I saw that were in here that are premium members. Megan, who just messaged. I also saw, I think, Yolanda was in here, and Latasha. I remember seeing those names in the monthly Q&A. So it's good seeing you guys. And I also saw a couple other names in here that I recognize. John Larkin, our buddy. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Yeah, I didn't see him in here earlier, and I thought I saw Miracle Wanzo in here. Miracle, if you're still here, man, it's so good to see you on here. I miss hanging out with you. We don't get to see each other enough, but I guess we'll see you in New Orleans at e-commerce Fuel Live. But it's cool seeing names that we recognize in the chat. So, all right, we had questions. We promised open Q&A. Let's get to the questions. And if you have any other questions, we're happy to answer those. Just throw them in the chat box. We are here to help you out. So Melinda is asking, I developed a product myself from scratch, i.e. it does not exist anywhere yet. I was quoted an MOQ of 500. Does that mean I have no way of asking for a lower MOQ or for a trial order? So I've done this quite a bit when we've developed products that haven't existed yet. And the way that we push this, we do say the same words, trial order, test order, et cetera. The key, if you want to get lower MOQ, is to basically tell them, look, like, we need to develop this relationship, make sure everything goes right the first time. If there's any issues, we can correct them on the second order. Like, let's just say there's a quality issue or a design issue because it's a brand new product, and you want to just make sure that your customers are happy with it, that you're getting positive reviews, that you're getting positive feedback, and your next order will be 500 or 750 or 1,000, whatever it is that you want to promise them. And typically, like, that allure of getting bigger orders the next time, just tell them, like, I'll never place an order moving forward under 500 pieces or whatever the number is. And Dave thinks it's funny. I've actually said that, so maybe I'm saying it the wrong way. But we've had pretty good luck with getting MOQs down. Trust me, I can fix it. But at any rate, that's the way that we've handled that.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is too, if you're just going back and forth in email at this point, you have no business relationship with them. They don't know whether you're serious or not. What can help is if you show a little bit of commitment. If you order even like one, like I say, a trial order is the best way. But if they're not going to send you a trial order of 20 units because it's a custom product, order a couple samples of one of their other products and just show them a little bit of money. And like, oh, this person is actually willing to commit some type of money. Because for Alibaba or all these suppliers, for every 100 inquiries they get, they maybe one time will see any money from any of those inquiries. So if all of a sudden you're one of those people that is obviously serious because you forked over a little bit of money, then they're a lot more open to negotiating MOQs with you because they know that you're more serious, more dedicated, and they kind of have you hooked at that point. And at that point, all they really need to do is reel up the big order, and if that takes a small order to get to the big order, then they'll be more willing. But show some type of commitment in the beginning, even if it's $100 or $200 to get some sample into you. Again, they'll just be more open to working with you than on a smaller order, even for a custom product.
Okay. Larry says, would you guys advise a newbie who got maybe an MOQ of 100 units to have the shipment come to my home where I could prep it for UPS shipment to FBA? Yeah. So I mean, if you're just getting started in this game, I would not ship your very first shipment directly into Amazon. I'd want to be looking at it like I still am obsessive, but like I was even more obsessive at that stage because the stakes are higher. It's your first product. You want to make sure you get it right. So you can kind of become like the inspection company. Obviously, you want to have it inspected in China first, but like the post-inspection company, make sure everything looks and feels and acts the way that you were fully expecting before risking your brand new Amazon business. Bring that into your house, throw the labels on it, ship it into Amazon yourself. At some point, relatively quickly, that will become a burden that you don't want to take on anymore. I remember the very first time we unloaded a container, how excited I was. I was like, oh my God, our container's here. And I got up in there and offloaded it. And pretty quickly after that, I was like, this is not what I should be doing with my life. So at some point you're going to feel that way. But to begin with, I think it's good. It's good experience from all kinds of angles to get that in your hands first. You can get used to printing out those labels and putting them on the boxes and setting up the shipment and those labels and getting them into Amazon. I think that knowing how the whole process works is really important. And that way, when you pass it off to someone else and they're telling you that this is difficult or they can't do it or it's taking XYZ time, you can call BS on them and say, I used to do this in 5 minutes, shut the hell up and just go do it. So,
yeah. And a couple things I'll add into there too. Number one, never ever send a product into Amazon that you have not seen yourself. So at some level, you need to see that product before it ever goes into Amazon. You don't need to see every time that you send it in, but the very first time you need to see that product in some capacity. The second thing, with a 3PL, what a lot of people don't realize with 3PLs, and there's a few questions in this about 3PLs. I have a 3PL that I've worked with for a long time, just south of the border in Washington. And what they are, they're almost like a co-work space for me. So my shipments all go in there, they'll pick and pack them and do everything that I need them to do. But I can also go down there and I can work. They have basically a section of the warehouse assigned for all of our company's products. I can go down there, I can open boxes, I can look at stuff, I can even set up a little photo shoot, I can analyze returns, I can do all these different things. But yeah, it's great. It saves me having to have an actual warehouse with staff in Canada or the US. So a lot of people think that a 3PL is kind of like Amazon, where they take your stuff in there and you can never go see your products once they're in there. But if you pick a 3PL that's relatively close geographically to you, then you can actually kind of use them, like I mentioned, as a co-working space.
One of the other questions that came up while we were doing the webinar, Dave, was the website for the China exhibition stuff that you were talking about. So while I'm doing the next question, do you mind throwing that link in the chat, please?
ChinaExhibition.com, and I'll type it in the chat box here.
Perfect. So Larry's asking, is a 3PL even needed at a small level, at the small level? I would say absolutely not, definitely not needed. I mean, if I was just getting started all over again, I would just like literally use my garage and my house to get started with. It's actually kind of funny looking back at history, how many businesses I've run out of my garage. Mm-hmm. When I was doing eBay back in the 90s, I ran it out of my house. The poker affiliate company we were shipping out sets of poker chips. Like I literally did that from my house. When we were first doing treadmill.com, we had some treadmills in our garage and cutting board as well before we got our warehouse. So yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with doing that. That's actually one of the great things about doing FBA. And the stuff's close to you. At some point, your wife or significant other or whoever you might share the house with might start complaining about not being able to park their car in the garage or use the guest room anymore. Those are usually the things that have triggered us having to move on.
I mean, it's terrible. I think even if you have a warehouse or a 3PL or anything, at some point over time, your house just becomes consumed with all your different products that you developed.
For sure. But I mean, I think that in any business, you want to keep your expenses as low as possible and be as nimble as possible in the beginning. So getting a warehouse or having a 3PL or having these extra pieces like hurts in that regard. So I would try to be as nimble as you can for as long as you can. Whoops. All right. The next question is, what kind of written contracts, agreements, or terms do you recommend when working with an initial order at a factory? So this isn't any different for us, whether it's an initial order or our 20th order. We have a PO template that we use that just has some basic terms of they need to have it done by XYZ date. Otherwise, there's going to be a penalty, which we never honestly ever enforce, but they don't know that. And we want them to get that done. The payment terms, the exact thing that we're ordering, and there's other terms and stuff that we put on the PO. And, again, whether it's a trial order or our 20th order, we use that same paperwork.
Yeah. And so a couple of notes on that, just my personal experience.
first off, contract or agreement or anything like that, you're never going to be able to legally enforce them. I mean, even if it was America, you're not going to enforce a $5,000 or $10,000 contract. It's just not going to be worth your time. What it does, though, is it clarifies expectations. So like Mike mentioned, if you have a deliver by XYZ date and they agree to a penalty for it, again, even though you're not necessarily ever going to enforce that penalty, at least everybody realizes at that point that you're serious about that date. And at the very least, if they all of a sudden have 10 orders, but they can only fulfill 9 of them, well, they're going to ditch the one order that doesn't have a late penalty clause in the order and do the other 9. So make sure you have it in there, because if everybody else has a late penalty clause in their order and you don't, well, you're going to be the first order that they are late with. A couple other things on your contracts. Make sure on your contract, it can just be an Excel PO template, but make sure in that PO template that you mention all the clear specifications of the product. Describe that product in as much detail as possible. So I'll give you an example. We're developing a bag. Make sure that you specify the material type of that bag. So when we're ordering this bag, we specify it needs to be 600 denier polyester. There'll be 2 stainless steel D-rings on it. There'll be 2 removable cooler bags on it. Just describe it in as much detail as possible, because 2 things will happen if you don't. First, they'll just not be clear with what your expectations are. Maybe there's some miscommunication along the way, and they've just simply inadvertently ignored a significant part of that product, which is important to you, which they didn't realize is important. And second, if you don't specify it, Chinese suppliers figure if you don't mention it and specify it, that it's a negotiable point. So if you don't say, hey, I need this really thick 600 denier fabric, if you don't mention that, they'll figure, okay, well, we can use a thin fabric because Dave didn't mention anything. So in your PO, mention as much as possible all the important parts of that product that you're ordering.
The next comment here was, thanks for your time, guys. I'm a big fan. I think that's the best comment we've gotten so far. I appreciate the comment, Larry. All right. And Charles is asking, what is the most secure way to transfer money besides wire transfers when dealing with a new trading company or a factory?
I would say Western Union, probably.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. That was a joke.
That was a joke? Okay. I was like, all right. I missed that. I mean, I send wire transfers. I use American Express International Payments to do it. But like, if you're asking, is there any protection or anything or ways to do that? The answer is no. I mean, if you order through Alibaba, through a trade assurance partner or something like that, then yes. But so the way that we handle this, I mean, typically any factory that we're ordering from for the first time, in most cases at this point, we've met them, either at the Canton Fair or going to their factory. We're in a fortunate position to be able to do that. But if we were placing an order with a new factory that I had never heard of before and I just kind of found online, I would be using Asian Inspection to go out there and pay the $300 and have them go verify that they physically exist, that all their banking information exists, and that they're a real company. That's well worth the money when you're placing a 5 or 6 figure order to make sure that it's a legitimate company and that everything matches up. And that's a service they provide.
And one note I'll make on that. So people get scammed in China, and it's incredibly rare, but almost exclusively the way that people get scammed is they think they're paying a Chinese company and they're actually paying some company in Nigeria or some dude in Nigeria or some individual in Hong Kong or something. You paying money to a company in China, I have never in my life, 10 plus years of doing this, heard of anybody being scammed. Like I say, what happens is people end up sending money to places where they don't, false places that they think exist, which don't really. So when you do a wire transfer, what happens is that you're going to be given that company's name, the location of their bank, which is going to be in China, obviously, and the company address and all this. If that doesn't match up, the wire transfer won't go through. So by doing a wire transfer, yes, it's scary because if the supplier decides to scam you, you're never going to get it back. But at least by doing a wire transfer, you 100% know that that company in China exists. You know the address that they've given you matches up to the banking information. And again, you know it's going to China and not Nigeria or some faraway country, which has no relation to who you think that you're ordering from. So there's some implicit security actually in a wire transfer, even though there's also some implicit.
When you're sending to China specifically, like they're like really like they or anal is the only word I can come about to, but particular I guess is probably a better word. Like the company name in the account number have to match like character for character. So if you like even add a period or like an LTD or something, whatever at the end of it, it won't go through. So like as what Dave was saying, it's like just that extra layer of security. So you're probably going to be fine. You might get screwed in some other way. They might send you like some cheap, crappy product, but like they're not going to probably just steal your money.
No. And I mean, in China, their system of justice too is sometimes a lot more practical than it is in North America.
I think they just cut your head off.
I believe that. I think they started a hand and worked their way up to
the hand. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So Pete says, an add-on from a previous question, does your premium package offer any agreement templates for sourcing terms and et cetera? I believe we do have a PO template in there.
There's a PO template in there, and there's also a quality inspection checklist that you should do for your products as well.
Do you have a reference list of different import suppliers? And when you say import suppliers, Alan, do you mean companies that do the shipping and importing, or do you mean like manufacturers? If you mean import a company, like as a part of premium, we also have a list of like a reference list of companies, and we include that in there. So that is definitely in there, like our freight forwarder and stuff like that. If that's what you're asking for, that's all in there.
In terms of factories, no, it's impractical just for the fact that every factory is going to produce and specialize in different types of widgets. So unless you're importing coloring books and markers or ATV products, our factories are going to be completely different than what you need.
Melinda's asking, what percentage of your retail price is your 3PL costs? I've never looked at that from that perspective.
I think a better way to look at it in terms of a percentage, just some example costs, like Mike mentioned, he's paying $10 a pallet. I pay roughly 20 where I am. Typically unloading a container is $200 to $400. And then there's anywhere from $1.50 to a $3.50 pick and pack charge. And then on top of that, you have other miscellaneous things like labeling fees, which range from 10 cents to 25 cents. If you break that down on a per product basis, I don't know, I would think it's definitely below 10%, but that gives you an idea of some of the example costs which you're going to face when you're using a 3PL.
Alexa says, thank you guys for doing the webinar. You're welcome. I'm selling on Amazon. I have my own warehouse. I've been thinking on doing FBA in Canada, but I'm very worried on the FBA fees. They don't seem clear to me, and tax compliance.
Funny thing, if you go to ecomcrew.com right now, the latest blog post is an FBA fee calculator.
Perfect. And also there's a couple articles on there about Canada. Like I can tell you, Canada's been a really good investment for us. I'm glad that we've done it. We use a company that we recommend through EcomCrew Premium that set everything up for us, got us our tax ID number and helps us with the filings. It's relatively simple. We add those costs to the product sales price in Canada. People, I think, in Canada are used to spending more to get it within Canada, and our sales are continuing to grow there. Our A cost on ads there is incredibly low. It's definitely been well worth the price of admission for us. Yeah,
one thing I'll say about tax compliance, if you're Canadian, it's obviously a lot easier than if you're not Canadian to get set up in Canada. To actually open up an Amazon account, I think that you are going to need a GST number in Canada. If you have already sole proprietorship in Canada, then you'd likely already have your GST/business number. If you don't have a business number yet in Canada and you are Canadian, I highly recommend that you get one because it's not going to cost you really anything to set up. It's basically good for you for life. And in Canada, doing our taxes and everything for a sole proprietorship is very, very easy. So there's really no disincentive for you not to have a business number. So that should be your first step. Just Google business number Canada, go sign up, get one, and then you're off to the races.
I'm going to put a couple links for you here from EcomCrew on fees and also Amazon Canada that Dave has written, and Dave writes some awesome articles. So
thank you.
Wow, we've reached the end of the questions. How did that happen? I think that there were a couple that came in through email. Did we get to those, or let me get those real quick. I know there was one here in the inbox I saw earlier today. Let me get to that real quick. 1 second, gotta find it. I think this is from Alexis as well. Yeah, that's same thing. Yeah, how are you sure the FBA costs? So definitely check that out. And how do you handle the tax compliance? Yeah. Cool, Alexis. Hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, if you got any other questions, just let us know. We're happy to help. But those articles should definitely be helpful. The FBA fees, you know, there's the obvious stuff, obviously, right? Like their storage fees, the pick, pack, and ship fees. The things that get you that you don't really notice are them not receiving all of your inventory and having to go through and deal with that hassle, just the time issue of that. Refunds is something people don't really notice and think about. There's like lost stuff in the warehouse and other stuff like that. But yeah, there's definitely things to be aware of. But so we look at, overall net profit of that relationship, and it's still obviously pretty favorable and definitely worthwhile.
Yeah. Figure a lot of people use 15% for selling fees on Amazon, which, believe it or not, actually do vary by category. A lot of people don't realize that, but there are some categories which are higher and lower per category for selling fees. And in terms of FBA shipping fees, good ballpark figure is around 10%. Again, it's going to vary by product, but overall, if you just want a ballpark figure, look at 25% in total for all FBA and Amazon selling fees.
Alan says, thanks for the webinar. Informative for a first-time user. Love hearing those positive comments. It keeps us going, and glad to have you on board here. John, my buddy John Larkin from over in Ireland. Enjoyed listening, lads. Keep up the good work. Vacationing in Spain at the moment. So an enjoyable way to spend an hour on the terrace with a beer. I am jealous, man. I'd love to be there with you right now. I know we'd have a good conversation about something silly.
I'm still trying to figure out where John disappeared to that night.
Yeah, you got to let us. John actually was one of the. Well, I've known John for a long time, but he was also at our mastermind that we did in Hong Kong. And John can stay out late and hang out like the best of us, but he just disappeared on us one night around 2 a.m. I think he was just like he was afraid to show us the white flag, so he just ran away. Bruce was asking, do you guys mention using an agent to find your supplier? We didn't talk about that today. It's actually something that I'm in the process of working on myself personally. I mean, I'm at a point where I just don't want to go to China anymore. Like or go there fewer times per year at an absolute minimum. I do think it's important to go over there and shake hands. And as I was joking earlier, let them get you drunk, which that's joking and being serious, because it does actually, even though it's hurting your body, it goes a long way to developing a relationship with them. And it's definitely an important part of their culture, but it's also just physically grueling going over there a couple times a year. So finding an agent to help with this is something that we've been looking at. And I'm working with a guy that's helping us develop a few products right now that I hope to be able to recommend to everyone at Ecom Crew. But I'm always like really hesitant to do that. We actually had a situation, as an example, like just come up this week where we recommended something to somebody that's a premium member. And all of our premium members, we just recommend anybody that we use and try to help them out as much as we possibly can. But we're also in a situation where, like, if it doesn't work out perfectly for them, it looks really bad on us and also makes us feel horrible. Like when it happens in my business, like I'm like, yeah, whatever, like I just move on. But like if I've recommended something to somebody and it doesn't work out perfectly, then I just makes me feel horrible. So like I'm hoping to be able to get that as a reference for people here, and we'll see what happens. But I'm hoping moving forward that we can do like a combination of direct relationships with factories and also using an agent that kind of helps us cut a lot of this out of the process.
One thing I'll recommend too, Bruce, look at trading companies. A lot of times they'll have their catalog, of course, but they can also help you to source products that are specific just for you. So look at trading companies opposed to necessarily a local agent in America or Canada or wherever you are. Trading companies can sometimes be a catch-all for everything.
John's saying he's going to Yiwu in August. Should he use a guide or not?
Give me an email, John, or a Facebook message, because we are Facebook friends. I have a company that I use as well as what's her name? Jenny, I think. But I'll give you a reference if you want. They won't charge you anything. I think they add on 5% of any products that you order. And yeah, they'll be your guide the entire trip.
Just makes me think of Forrest Gump. Jenny.
Jen A?
That's my Jenny.
Did I say Jen A?
No, you did say. I just I don't know. Melinda said, "Thank you for answering all of my questions. Of course, happy to help." And we had another one I just clicked off by accident. He was thanking us as well. Pete said, "Thank you, gents. You're welcome, Pete." Bruce says, "Sorry, I had a call come in. Did I miss the website that lists the trade shows?" You did miss that. If you scroll up in the chat here, it's China Exhibition with an X. No, just China Exhibition. ChinaExhibition.com, but there's a link up in the chat there for that.
John, you mentioned that you reached out to Jen A in the blog. If you go to, I forget what the big hotel is there. I think it's the Marriott, I want to say. It's literally right beside the market. You go down to the reception at 7 a.m. and there will be a lineup of Yiwu agents waiting.
It's like the Home Depot parking lot.
Thing I've ever seen. Sit down for 1 minute to check your text messages or something, and literally you'll have a queue of Chinese agents there waiting to show you around. So if you don't find one beforehand in Yiwu, you can find one day of, absolutely no problem. Just go to the Marriott.
Andre says, "Very interesting webinar. Keep going. Thanks." Thank you for the comment. I think we're done, though, unless you got any questions, Andre. I think we've answered all the questions and we're done with the content from today. I'm glad you guys all found this valuable. Again, we'd love to have you in premium. This is, we use the same format here, and I recommend you guys looking at this for your own businesses in general. It's something that I kind of stumbled upon by accident with Color It, with basically giving value first. So with Color It, we give these free downloadable coloring pages and lead magnets, and with Tactical, we're doing giveaways, and Wild Baby, we've been doing we're doing this baby shower game thing now. So basically, you interact with people by giving them a bunch of free stuff first, and then when they need the actual products, you got them on your email list, they eventually buy. And it's a similar thing here. And people that never end up buying, it's just a part of the business. It's fine. We're happy to give the free stuff, but we'd love you to be on in premium. Come check it out. ecomcrew.com/premium, 50% off. This week only, expires on Friday. It's a Prime Week thing. We also have a yearly one as well. That's a deep discount if you sign up for a year. But this code is not available on the yearly because that's already a good value. Abbas, is that how you pronounce your name? Abbas? Abbas. That's a cool name. I never heard someone named Abbas. Abbas says, "Yes. Great webinar. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Appreciate the positive comments." Again, I think that maybe it's only child syndrome or something. It's always fun hearing positive comments. I like getting reassurance. I don't know what it is, but it's always cool. Knowing people are enjoying the stuff that we're doing. It's obviously a lot of hard work, but it's fun. We love helping people out. It's neat hearing a lot of the stories that come out of this. There's people showing us, things that they've done in their business. We just had our first Under the Hood segment person come back and do another Under the Hood. 6 months later, he doubled his business. Felt pretty cool. It was neat. Go check out those episodes. So I think that's it for today. No more questions. We'll be back next month with another free webinar. We haven't picked the topic yet, but it'll be about 1 month from today. Any last words, Dave?
No, it's Subway Wednesday, so I got my cold cut waiting for me.
Nice. I have broccoli in the fridge. I've been eating healthy. Still trying to lose. If you guys listen to my goals episode, I'm on my target to lose 15 pounds this year, and I have lost 7.8 as of today. So
perfect. Yeah, the only thing I'll close with is great job, Mike, and thank you guys for coming. Definitely really helps having you guys all in here and doing some Q&As, and I know I get a lot of value actually hearing other people's stories and some of the other struggles that people have, and it's nice being able to give it back whenever we can.
The only sad thing about today was I learned that John's over in Spain and I'm not with him hanging out on the terrace having a beer. That would be so awesome.
Maybe Hong Kong will reconnect.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, everybody.
See you
Have
guys.
a great day and happy selling. Talk to you next time.